Hi again, everyone. Welcome into UnAnchored Boston with Bob Lobel and Mike Lynch. And as always, we are brought to you by Cold Springs RV, your destination for all things camping. And where? We're in New Hampshire, of course, and the great George Gray. George Gray's Lexington Toyota, 409 Mass Ave in Lexington. And we are thrilled today to have the producer, director, the man of all things, along with his brother, Nick. We have Colin Barnicle, who's with us today. And Bob Lobel always likes to handle the formal introductions, Colin. So him being the senior guy, I'm just going to step aside and let him formally introduce you. I don't know what he has up his sleeve, but Robert, take it away.
Well, first, it's a good thing you look like your mother, not your father. That's the first
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I don't have that split down the middle of my tooth.
I was going to say, he already has shown more creativity than his father ever has in his entire career.
Yeah, right. The only thing we have in common is we go to George Gray, Lexington Toyota.
Right.
That's where I got my car. Yeah.
Here's the deal, Colin. Your dad, Mike,
Yeah.
we had a radio show. He had a radio show. I shouldn't say it was one of the best things I ever was a part of in the whole, checkered career that I had. And he would say that, his kids growing up, he says, I'm on a radio station nobody listens to. I write for a newspaper nobody reads. And I'm on a television show that nobody watches. So that's our introduction to the Barnicle clan. But
My little brother Tim used to go on his radio show like midweek when he was supposed to be at school. And then he would try to my dad would try to lie. He would tell my mom, like, no, that was pre-recorded. And Tim would come home like, no, we skipped school and we went to I think Tim literally got like a truancy warning. Like, you got to send the kid to school.
But so many things I want to ask you as part of the introduction. This is a robbery.
Yeah,
was fantastic.
Awesome.
It was so great. It was about the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum art heist.
Yeah.
And my question to you is, I know we're going to talk about the comeback.
Yeah.
My question to you about This Is a Robbery, you got any updates? You think the paintings, like the Storm, the great paintings, are hanging somewhere in some Arab sheik's living room, or are they in a roll in some kind of closet waiting to be found?
You hope. We had gotten leads that some of the art may have gone through Corsica and then out to the Far East. And then there were other leads like that, like, you don't know, they were put on a plane to Saudi Arabia or something. But I think the last thing that we know, and I think Tim Kirchin's reported on it, but that they were, a couple of weeks after the robbery, they were being held in an apartment. Most of them were being held in an apartment near Santarpio's Pizza in East Boston off Route 1. That was, of course, that's the way it goes. But past that, yeah, it's just, I don't know. I know when we got into that project, we were like, oh, this is going to be good. And then, it's like nobody's ever been arrested. The art's never been found, and it's never gone to adjudication. So there's no discovery on it, and you have no footage of the actual crime scene. So you have no suspects, no one's found the missing art or really seen it since, and no footage from that crime scene. And we were like, hey, and we're supposed to do a 4-part visual thing on this. We were like, okay, a little different. But yeah, I mean, last we heard, it was, you could have gone to Santarpio's Pizza in 1990 and would have been maybe 100 yards from the Sea of Galilee.
It was an unbelievable story then, and it's unbelievable now. I mean, it's almost beyond comprehension that this actually happened and they got away with it.
Yeah, and it's I was just talking to Nick. I mean, the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum is like a quarter mile from Fenway Park. So we have a very definitive area of Boston that we are working on. It's like, just between Fenway Park and Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. That less than a quarter mile is that's our sweet spot right in there. Nowhere else, just that.
Well, people are just marveling about this new docuseries, The Comeback Story of the 2004 Red Sox. And I don't know where we begin here, but let's begin at the beginning. How there's been a million stories about 2004 and how you felt that you could do it differently and as well as you did.
Yeah, the story came to us through John Skipper and Howard Bryant. They had pitched it to Netflix in July of last year. And then on, I think it was late August, early September, they asked us to come on, which we of course said yes to. But it was, it's the most covered thing in maybe sports over the last 20 years. But I remember when I was interning for the Red Sox, I would go down, it was 2005. I would go down the street and I would get there used to be a D'Angelo's there, and I would get like D'Angelo sub, and I would sit at the bus stop like a vagrant apparently and eat the sandwich. And there was a billboard for a new Batman movie coming out with Christian Bale in it, directed by this like director I'd never heard about, Christopher Nolan. And I was like, God, another Batman movie? I mean, good Lord. Like, this is like, haven't they done like 8 of these? And then you go see the movie and it's incredible because it's about like an origin story. So I think Nick and I, when we approached it, we were like, yeah, we know the ending. They come back from 3-0. They win the World Series. So you have the ending, which is different than the other project we did, This Is Robbery, where you didn't know the ending when you started, but we knew the ending. So we always thought, okay, what's the origin of them getting to that point? Not so much the origin of them coming back from 3-0, but the origin of how the team, came back from 85 years, 86 years of, losing. Or how'd they come back from 03? How'd they come back from the fiasco of the Nomar Manny trade that winter? How'd they come back from, losing for like May, June, July? You're basically a 500 team, that 2014. So it wasn't just the comeback from 3-0. We always felt like there needed to be like, where was the ignition point on how the Red Sox changed their culture to understand how they came back from 3-0. And that seems to have happened. We just kind of built back from there. Originally, it was supposed to be 2 parts, 45 minutes, and we doubled the length of it, which, thankfully Netflix went along with and were helpful with. But they were like, yeah, you can double the length, but you got to keep the same time scale. Like, you got to deliver it by August. And we were like, no, we can do this. So it was all hands on deck, so to speak. But we got it done. But we always thought it was an origin story more than a comeback story.
How much play is this going to get outside of the Boston area? I mean, it's a must see for everybody that was around in 2004, because it's not just about the Red Sox. Yeah. It's about everybody that's watching. It's about what their life was like in 2004. That's the feeling I got taking away from it. It wasn't so much about the comeback of the Red Sox. It's what I was doing at those moments that it seemed to bring back. So I wonder, outside of the Boston, the New England area, how much impact this will have.
Yeah, well, the Yankees are down 3-0 right now, so
yeah,
they might have to watch it.
And you can bet tonight, it'll be mentioned that the only team that ever came back from 3-0 would be the 2004 Red Sox.
Yeah,
and
it's like an instant plug by the Yankees.
That's got to happen tonight, right?
Yeah, it's their worst nightmare. Not only are they down 3-0, but they have to plug a series about them losing. It's like a catch-22. So, I always thought about this series, like when Nick and I, my brother who did it with me, we always we were talking about it. And I always thought about like, if I was watching a doc on Australian rules rugby, right? Like, I know nothing about rugby, never been to Australia. But if I was watching a doc on it, what would I want to see? And I was like, if you just kind of buy into the the characters or the personalities in it, it doesn't really matter what's going on in terms of like balls and strikes. Like you don't need to follow that. Certainly my mom watched it and somebody hits a double and she's like, why is that guy on second base? And you're like, well, it's a double, Mom. We always thought about it in terms of like, just if you can buy into the personalities and the characters telling you the story, then it doesn't matter the game. You just want them to win, and you feel it when they lose. And that was kind of the basic thing. So I'm hoping, and the Red Sox Nation travels everywhere, right? I mean, you go to a game in Seattle, there's more Red Sox fans in the stands than there are Mariner fans.
So I certainly agree, and I think you're absolutely right. I mean, you get used to Millar. Millar is like and you get used to, you see things you'd never thought you'd see before, and it's like Breakpoint, those kinds of docs. Okay, I'm not a big fan of professional tennis, but boy, this was a great and interesting documentary.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it makes a lot of sense. Did you guys ever consider using the Fever Pitch? The movie was being made during the course of that season.
I know. But Fallon is a Yankee fan. He's a Yankee fan. I interned with the Red Sox, and weirdly, my next internship was with Jimmy Fallon at when he first started late night. And as bad as I was as an office intern, front office intern for the Red Sox, I think I might have been worse at Jimmy Fallon. So I don't know if there would have been any name recognition if we asked him. And we just thought it was like, you got to pick an avenue. You got to pick, like, are you trying to cover everything, or are you just following the organization, like the team through this? Like, I feel like a lot of docs, sometimes they try to cover too much. They're trying to cover what the fans are feeling and what like huge stars of that team are feeling at that time, or in the team aspect of it. And we were just trying to follow, like, what's it like, and what are you doing in the clubhouse? What are you doing in the front office? What are you doing in the owner's box? Like, outside of that, we felt like it would matriculate in like the feeling of Boston, but we tried to stay just with the team.
I mean, the litany of people that appear in this it's just mind-boggling. From Theo to John Henry to Schilling, Dave Roberts. Who flat out said no, refused to come on?
Yeah, well, they're baseball. Yeah, they're baseball players. What they're really good at is like taking pitches. So it's like we asked everybody, all the principals on either side. So like Nomar, A-Rod, Jeter, Posada, and they they didn't want to do it, or they constantly had a scheduling conflict or something like that. So, and they don't want to be in it. That's fun. I mean, that's fair. That's fine. But I also think like everybody on our team's not from, Massachusetts. I think it gave a good indication to them that the story was kind of like a little more present. The wound was a little more fresh than 20 years for some of these players. Like they just didn't want to talk about it. And I think for the team we were working with, they were like, oh, okay. So there's still some animosity there. So that was good for the team, but yeah, I mean, we asked everybody. Some said no.
Let me say, I was looking at Curt Schilling. Is he not well physically? He looks like he has some something on his temple.
I don't know. I mean, we didn't hang out with him for it was just like half a day or a couple of hours. So I mean, that didn't come up, but he was ready to go when we sat down and talked. And he was a great interview in terms of like, you'd ask him one question and you wouldn't have to ask another question for like 8-10 minutes. He would just go through everything. So he was there, but I don't know. I mean, age is you can't beat age.
Right.
Well, we've all tried. We're still trying. I was out playing. This is a true story. Why wouldn't it be? I was golfing Saturday with this woman, Carol McKean. She's an events planner, and she brings me this hat. She brings me the Larry Lucchino hat for a gift. And I said, and then all of a sudden we started talking about the comeback.
Yeah.
She asked me if I've seen it. I said, yeah, I did see it.
Yeah.
And then she started talking about it. She couldn't stop talking about it.
Yeah.
And we both remembered, we both had good laughs about the same things. We ended up both agreeing there were, we cried.
Yeah.
We both, I know, it's true. It's exactly what happened. And I'm sure you know exactly where in the doc it happened. I'm not trying to serve as a spoiler here, but I can't believe Jason Varitek made me cry. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just out of control. When we thought it was the Francono stuff was about the funniest thing we've seen in a long time, about the analytics, right?
Yeah.
And then we said, well, did you see Shaughnessy and Millar? Did you see that whole sec?
Well,
You know, yeah. Did you see the Jack Daniels stuff and the two shots? Yeah. You know what? So we went through and spent all this time before we were golfing talking about the comeback. And it's had that kind of influence on, I think, anybody that was around and part of that whole experience, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. And we talked to, like, Larry, for instance, we talked to him extensively before his death, leading up to his death throughout the project. And I remember, when he died, and they have on the stanchions, the light stanchions, they have Tim Wakefield's number with a heart on it, and then they have Larry's with just a circle. And I thought, oh, he'd love this. He'd go ballistic over this. Why don't I have a heart? I only have a circle. So I was like, this is perfect. So yeah, we love Larry. My family loves Larry, and he was a huge part of it. He was
the adult in the room, as a matter of fact.
He's the adult in the room. I think Charles Steinberg is a long time kind of like right-hand man. Had said it for a long time. He said it before, but I'll steal his line. He's like, Larry was like Earl Weaver in a suit. He would just... He had that thing from his mentor, Edward Bennett Williams. It's called like contest living, where it's like you come to work every day and there's always something that you need to fix or argue for or not. And he was never not a lawyer. And that kind of like drive, pushing everybody every single day, and him and Steinbrenner went back. One of the things when we first gave it to Netflix, it was like, I think we gave them 4.5 hours. And one of the big chunks that we ended up having to cut out was the whole Steinbrenner Lucchino thing and how far it went back. It went back to the early 70s when George was suspended for a little bit in the early 70s for his donations to Richard Nixon during the Watergate process. And Larry was on the other side of that. He was working on the Watergate Commission as a young lawyer, and then him being president of the Orioles and fighting with George. And then they actually almost literally fought. They had to be pulled apart at an owners meeting in like Kenosha, Wisconsin in 1994. So that whole thing. And then he gets to the Red Sox, and it's just kind of like this matriculation of like, almost through osmosis, the whole organization starts to understand the impact of like, you want to win, but you want to win by beating the Yankees. So I think, Larry is one of the huge cogs of it.
The Evil Empire. He's the one.
Evil Empire. I mean, he delivered that line on Christmas Eve. It was like the New York Times reporter called him and asked him about it. And he's like, Christmas Eve, like you're taking the day off. And I think his first thing was no comment. And the reporter goes to hang up and he goes, hold on. And he gives the whole Evil Empire speech. And I think later he said it was a Star Wars reference, but Larry knew nothing about Star Wars. So I mean, I don't know. I don't know if that was it, but then the whole thing. And And to think that it just that a whole evil empire line came from not being able to sign Jose Contreras in Nicaragua, that they go down there, and Theo's South American scout had rented out the whole hotel in Nicaragua where Contreras was staying to freeze out the Yankees, and then he ends up signing with the Yankees. And, it's a guy, Jose Contreras, which really had no impact on 2003 and certainly no impact on 2004. He was gone by then, really. So, but that's how deep-seated it went. Like the 25th man on the roster was being fought for, and kind of fought for really hard by both clubs.
I got to ask you this: is now that we're talking about you, and I'm, mine is going out for all the scenes in the comeback. Was that actually Schilling's ankle?
Oh yeah, that was actually.
Because that was the bloody sock has always been a contention, and I guess it's
in
the Hall of Fame now. The bloody sock was it ketchup? It had to be a ketchup. It couldn't have been a bloody sock. But then again, I mean, that's definitive proof that it was the bloody sock.
It was a bloody sock, and I do think, after that first 2 innings, there is some intimidation factor just leaving the bloody sock on. I mean, it's just a sanitary sock. I worked in the clubhouse.
Right.
There's bins and bins of those. You could change them out. But I think after about the first or second inning, when it started to really become a focal point of the broadcast and of everybody, that you kind of leave it on to kind of show the other team what you're doing. It's like, I remember there was, the Prefontaine, the runner, he once broke a state Oregon record, and he did it with he was wearing a bloody shoe at the time, and he just kind of, after the race, he said, I left it on because every time I passed somebody, I wanted to make sure they knew that I was beating them on one foot. And I always thought that was a little bit what was going on in that game 6, and it worked.
Another great character is Derek Lowe.
D-Lo.
The clown. They think it's the clown versus the guy, Billy in aisle 43.
Oh my God. D-Lo's the man. D-Lo might be my +1 to any wedding event from now on. I'm married. I have children, but I've told my wife, +1 might have to go with D-Lo. He was incredible, and he's so honest about his own state of mind during these periods where he's just how horrified would you have been if you had heard that before game 4, that the starter is hoping to get out of the first inning? He thought that would be a victory. That'd be horrifying. It'd be he won 21 games the year before. It wasn't like he was, the 5th man on the roster. He'd be considered, he was 2nd or 3rd in the Cy Young race the year before, 21 games. I think he had a sub-3 ERA. He was a stud, and he's going out there for game 4 thinking, I don't know if I'm getting through the first inning. But that whole interview, he was really honest about that year, and him being every time I took the mound, every pitch, I just thought I was costing myself millions of dollars. And it was kind of shocking to me, and it's not in the project, but he was I really screwed up the deal, saying no to the deal that Theo offered me. It was a good deal, and then I bet on myself to do better. And I thought he was around the second start of the year, I was how am I going to do better than winning 21 games and a sub-3 ERA? So he constantly thought about it. But I was always kind of shocked by his I really his unbelievable regret that he didn't sign back with Boston, because he pitched for another 12 years. He won another 120 games. It wasn't he went into obscurity. He won I think 16 games the next year. But the power of the culture of Boston to still regret, not signing it, although you had a terrific career afterwards, was interesting to hear.
There's some people, myself included, think he should have been the MVP of the whole World Series and the whole playoffs because of they
Yeah,
wouldn't have gotten there without Derek Lowe.
he closed out every. He's got the.
Yeah. So
I
should he
think he's
not
the
have
only
been?
pitcher still to have the 3 wins in a clincher for
I mean,
each
I know they
division.
picked Manny Ramirez because he hit a home run and threw a guy out at the plate
Yeah,
in the first game against St. Louis or whatever. But it was D. Lowe that is the reason they were there.
yeah. Everybody forgets that Game 1 World Series was kind of like a disaster. It was like there was like 4 errors. Like nobody could field the ball. The
Right. Well,
pitching
remember the
gave up like
pitching? Remember the runner at third and
yeah.
stupid stuff in the World Series.
Yeah, it wasn't the like, we don't do a deep dive on it, but it wasn't like the most clean, best played World Series. It was, runners were making mistakes on the bases. I remember like the Cardinals, like who was it? Jeff Suppan coming off
Right.
third base. I don't even know why he was running. Like everybody was making mistakes, but we made less of them and I mean, they hit. I mean, they could hit. That's the thing about like the Yankees being down 3-0 now. They're not really hitting at all. And the Red Sox during those 3 losses, outside that game 2, where Lieber shut them down, they hit. They scored like I think 6 runs in the first game. Second game was a close game. And then they did score like, 7 runs in the third game. So it wasn't like they weren't hitting. It was just they like either the pitching was on and the hitting was off, or the hitting was on and the pitching was off, and just getting those 2 things lined up. Whereas, the Yankees now, it just seems like they're pitching well enough, but I mean, I think they're hitting under 180 with runners in scoring position for the entirety of the playoffs. And you're looking at it like, geez, like where's the offense going to come from?
Hey, Colin, we all knew what the outcome was going to be. However, when I was watching it, I could feel a palpitation in my chest. I was nervous that they weren't going to win the damn thing while I'm watching it. And I think the selection of your music and the pacing that you had really added to that. Was that on purpose or just a nice byproduct of putting this whole thing together?
No, that was on purpose. I always thought I thought one of the big things was like the first regular season or postseason game I saw outside Fenway Park was Game 7, 2003. Thanks, Dad. That was a great experience. So I always thought that was a huge, like I remember in 2004, it never leaves your head. Like 99 never left my head. That Chuck Knobloch, phantom tag. It never leaves, and you're just expecting it. And I always thought, like, for somebody who didn't remember it, or who hadn't gone through it, that they needed to experience it the way that the 18-year-old me experienced it in 2004. And a good example, like we went down to Austin after we interviewed Millar. We were coming through town. We called him and we came over to his house again. And his teenage sons were there, and they were born after 2004. They didn't experience it, so we were showing them some clips to see how it would play, and they don't remember the outcome of every game. So, them sitting there thinking like, oh my God, like, especially 2003, they're, saying, take Pedro out of the game. We're showing them that clip, and then we're showing them clips from 2004, just staying present in the story. And, the composer, Andrew Carroll, is unbelievable. And we were, like I said, it's like we expanded. We originally told him it's only 90 minutes of content, and then we did 3 hours. So he really worked with us. And I think the whole ethos there was like, keep it present, driving, have a little bit of Springsteen in the back of your mind as you're kind of making the music for this. And he was incredible.
Yeah, it was great. Mike, that's a great point, Mike, that what you asked Colin about the music. The music was in sync. It was even David, the Robert Steele There was so much drama. The fact that they threw over 3 times. I didn't remember that, but
3
I
times.
can't believe that they threw over 3 times before he went.
Yeah, it was interesting. The one thing we couldn't fit in there is there was the same situation almost exactly a month before when the Red Sox were playing the Yankees, where Dave went into pinch run for Millar again on first base, and it was a close game. And he was like, Mariano tried to throw over 2 times on me, and I was back safely. I ended up stealing the base on like the next pitch. So he was like, I knew I could do it, but on that so when he threw over twice, I thought, oh, first move, I'm gonna break for the bag. And on the third throw over, he breaks a little bit for the bag because he had planned it. He had seen him a month prior, only 2 throws over, and then he goes to the plate. So he's almost out, on that third throw over, just because of the fact that, he was like, I had been really watching tape and I used my experience. But yeah, God. And I remember when we went to go film the reunion, the 24 reunion, we were sitting in that back area next to the gate off of the Monster. And Manny was like walking around saying, there was no replay back then. Dave Roberts was out. Dave Roberts was out.
Huh.
We were like, Manny, no.
Were you the one that asked Francona the question about that? If analytics told you not to steal?
Yeah. I always felt, the basic structure of the whole doc series is like how did you change the culture and the ownership, the front office, and the clubhouse, right? And we always thought that it was getting everybody in sync together. And then, I knew Tito from working in the clubhouse, and I was like, he's like, it doesn't line up that perfectly. He's not like a super analytical guy. He's not like Dave Roberts or Kevin Cash. So we're sitting there, and he had, he's media trained. And so the first 45 minutes of the interview, he's good. He's media trained. And so I figured the only way I could really get him to be the Tito I saw in the clubhouse was to second guess him. And the sabermetrician would say, like, if you're on first base at that moment, there's a 51% chance you're going to steal, especially with Bill Miller up, who's got, I think, the second best OPS ever against Mariano Rivera. You would maybe you wouldn't really want to steal that base, considering Mariano's quick to the plate. And I think it was the best pop time of Posada's whole season, that throw. So it wasn't like the percentage that you could steal second was probably not as in score, is probably lesser, like statistically. So a sabermetrician would say you got to stay on first base. You try to get a good lead, but the probability of a double play, all this stuff isn't like that high. So I said it to Tito, and he was like, I knew, like, Tito uses some stats, but mostly it's like he's a baseball guy. So I knew that would get him. And it did. Yeah, he was like, nah. He was going. We're going to send him.
Those might
Yeah, but then, Colin, you said, what would you do? What would you do if you were told not to by the sabermetrician or something? And his answer was priceless.
Yeah. He tells the people to shove the scorecard in a particular place.
It's one of those moments in the doc that you'll love. I'm sorry, Lynchy. Go ahead.
No, I mean, like watching and listening to Theo Epstein was as good as I've ever heard him.
Yeah.
As good as he's ever been, and it was so insightful. And Bob and I were around the team for every single day, and thought we had heard it all, and said, but I was just riveted. I mean, I was like a 12-year-old kid.
He did 7. It was a 7-hour interview in one sitting, and he could have kept going.
Wow.
And I was so gassed at the end. I was like, we're done. Like, I called it. Like, I was like, that's it. We got it. He was incredible. I feel like a large part of it too was for a lot of, not only Theo, but feel for like even John Henry and the players for sure, was that after Wake passed, I feel like they felt like the story became more present to them because they were all collecting together. They were all texting more. They were all talking more, and they knew they had this 20-year reunion coming up, but they like got closer together and they were kind of remembering back, and like they realized like, oh yeah, this like it was a huge deal to Boston clearly, but it was a huge deal to them personally as well. And I feel like that after Wake passed, them being more present about the situation was like kind of bled into the interviews a lot. It made our job somewhat easier.
Did you have restrictions from Major League Baseball on how much video you could use?
No restrictions on how much film we were using. It was a little tough because it was, we really like most of the interviews happened in February and March, and we had to be done by really July. So you got, 5 months, 6 months, less than that to put together. And we doubled the runtime. So put together 3-hour doc series. So it was kind of like we were building the plane in the air a little bit. So, no restrictions for them. We were, you get into it and you're thinking you're partnered with a major organization. They're going to have restriction notes or censorship, but they were really good in terms of surprise, like, in terms of not really censoring anything. And I feel like mostly that was because they just wanted, they knew that there were a ton of docs on this before and a ton of books on this before, and you have to go deeper and more origin story and kind of let the guys go a little bit more unfiltered and show a little bit more unfiltered stuff. And that was part of the conversation where they were like, yeah, we understand that. So thank you to MLB for not, coming down and censoring us.
I have to do a commercial here, but I want to ask you one thing before I do it, or I'll forget because I'm of that age. Or if I don't do it now, I'll forget.
You never did it like 40 years ago.
Shut up. Where did you get the Millar Shaughnessy video? That to me is
Yeah.
That just doesn't pop up out of nowhere. I mean, somebody had, and it looked like they didn't know they were being videoed or what. I don't know.
No, yeah. I mean, yeah, that's been out there. We got the raw one from MLB.
Really?
MLB had it. So we got it from them. And then a lot of the other footage was just kind of like, what was unique about that time period is 03, 04. They were, especially 04, they were shooting everything Red Sox, Yankees. Like, you probably couldn't do a doc on another team in that period. There were no camera people there. They were only shooting. They were only shooting the Red Sox, Yankees.
Where did the Jack Daniels stuff come from?
Yeah, that was Millar. That was Millar.
There's so many unique things that Lynch and I would not have been able to shoot.
Yeah, Kev gave that to us. He was he was moving from his house from one house in Austin to another, and they were when we interviewed him, he was like, I have no idea where like any of this stuff is, and we were like, all right. And then he called us out of the blue one day, and he was like, I found it. We were unpacking. I found it. The digital tapes. I even found the recorder. So we went down there and we got the footage from him, and it was like, they're little cassette discs. They're from like 2003. So we were going through, and some of the stuff was like, some of the stuff's corrupted, like it didn't translate all that well, but a lot of the stuff did. So, yeah, they were great. He was filming everything.
Ecstatic.
Yeah. Yeah, we got it. It's like finding the Holy Grail.
No, all right.
Oh, here it is.
Yeah. How good is that?
Yeah.
All right, Lynchy, let me do this.
Go ahead, Bob. Like only
Mike's got a big question for you afterwards, but this is about camping. Of course, you guys, are so busy that you really don't have a good chance to enjoy the the lives and experiences of camping. So we're going to try to make you a happy camper. You're ready to see what's new in 2025 when Cold Springs RV has all of next year's models and they're arriving daily. So go check out the latest and all their types of models like pop-ups, travel trailers, fifth wheelers, and motorhomes. And at Cold Springs RV, the doors are always open. You can freely browse. If you want to see the latest in camping at Cold Springs RV, your destination is all things camping at Ware, New Hampshire. It's west of Goffstown. It's north of Tingsboro. Learn a little more online at coldspringsrv.com. coldspringsrv.com. And Colin Barnicle, Lynch has a question for you because this is all part of our thing.
All right, Colin, since nobody gets paid that comes on this show, but however,
neither do we, so don't worry about it.
Remember John Madden had a Madden cruiser.
Yeah.
So Cold Springs RV is going to build a Lobel Lynchy cruiser. And when it's finally built, we're going to give each of our guests has the use of it for 1 week to drive cross country. We will fly you back. The only caveat is that you have to pick somebody to ride shotgun with you across the country for a week.
Yeah.
And it could be somebody from this docuseries you just did, somebody who maybe didn't appear on it, or maybe just somebody that you'd like to have a conversation with going cross country. So who would it be?
It would be probably my 3-year-old, one of my daughters, one of my 4 or 5-year-old daughters. The questions the questions kids ask at like 5 are like, what's a cloud? And you're like, yeah, what is a cloud? Like, they're asking questions. Like, I remember my daughter the other day, we were driving back, I was picking her up from school, and she said, mommy's a better driver than you. And I was horrified. I was like, that's not true at all. And she goes, but don't worry, you're the most handsome. And I thought, oh, thank you. It's unbelievable. And then a couple seconds go by and she goes, Daddy? And I go, yeah. She goes, what's handsome mean? And I was like, okay, like, you don't even know what it means. You didn't, it means good looking. She was like, oh, okay. Mommy's good looking. And I was like, yeah, okay. Well, I didn't get any of the compliments there. Yeah, probably. Or my wife. Yeah, that would be, I guess I could bring Nick, although we'd probably get into a fist fight somewhere around, Nebraska.
Yeah. I don't have. You'd be on the side of the road. Nobody would be able to drive, and you'd be locked up in some jail down there.
Oh my God, yeah. When we first started, we were doing bump-ins for Sunday Night Baseball. We'd go to a city and film the park that they were in, and it was a great job. We did it for like 20 weeks. Sent out to every ballpark to do bump-ins, and this is maybe like 10 years ago. And Nick and I got into like a fist fight in the middle of Great American Ballpark in Cincinnati. I think over like chili dogs. It was like over nothing. It was like in the middle of filming. So I remember we turned in the footage and we forgot to shut off the sound on the footage. And it's just like, it's a beautiful shot, but it's like Nick and I are like clearly like having a fist fight behind the camera, And he was like, what's going on here? Did somebody attack you? We were like, yeah, somebody attacked us. It was a lawnmower went by or something, and we were trying to grab a hold of it. It was, Nick, my daughter, my wife, someone like that.
All right. So the obvious question is, how does one become a producer, director, creator, writer of docuseries?
Yeah.
How does that happen?
We did first of all, I was, as I've told you, I was a terrible intern for just about every company I worked for. So out of just pure not being able to be hireable, Nick and I started to work together in 2010. And I had worked in the clubhouse, and I was like, well, why don't we go do a doc on, the clubhouse and how it works and everything like that. And we did that, and we didn't go to film school or anything. We did it kind of like bootstrap. MLB Network put it on. And then we got no jobs. We thought like the floodgates are going to open, and nothing happened from it. And then we started to do these little short documentaries around New York City for the then Huffington Post, and somebody at ESPN saw one of those, and Mike McQuaid and Tom Archer, and they hired us to do these Sunday night baseball bump-ins. They're like little essays. You would write them and then go film them, 60-second bump-ins. And it was like kind of, we thought they hired us because we were the most creative guys, and we were probably the cheapest.
Jesus, of course.
So we did that, and then we got doing that, we got another job working for ESPN doing these short documentaries, one on a baseball card, one on actually Alex Rodriguez's contract to the Red Sox, which was, it's like sometimes you just get lucky in timing. Like short documentaries back then, they used to go on ESPN, like the worldwide leader in sports. So you can't do that now. You make a short documentary now, you got to put it on YouTube, and nobody's going to see it because it's not TikTok. So that got us another job, and we slowly started to build up from there. Just kind of adding time to the amount of stuff we were doing until 2016. We started to work on This is what would become This Is a Robbery, which came out in 21. So that took a while, but we got that done, and then we got this project, which was nice. But we're always kind of it's always kind of like you're paying Peter, whatever the saying is, paying Peter to pay Paul or whatever.
Rob Paul, right?
Yeah. It's always kind of one of those things. You're always just trying to work up to the next thing, do the thing as best as possible. But a lot of it was just naturally, getting one small job, then getting a little bigger job, and then whatever. But I mean, we started in 2010. We've been doing it for 15 years now. So I'd hope we'd be here.
I think you're more than here. I mean, between This Is a Robbery and The Comeback, these are two fabulous documentaries. I mean,
probably could have come here sooner if we weren't like literally fighting each other.
We'll have some fun once in a while. Yeah. I have some questions for you before we go, because Dan Duquette.
Yeah,
I've always felt that he should have gotten a ring in 2004 for his contributions to that roster. Mm-hmm. And the only passing reference to Dan Duquette was a little short video of him talking. I'm not sure who, maybe John Henry or who.
Yeah, with John Henry. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you? I'm sure, like you said, you can't do everything.
Yeah.
You can't include everything.
Yeah. We wanted to I think why Dan's not in here, and I agree. Dan's contribution to the team is kind of like, it's like not acknowledged. It kind of like Grady's isn't acknowledged from that 04 team. Like he's like.
He was, that was unbelievable. There was another thing, unbelievable stuff that you had.
Yeah. But Dan, the core of that roster were guys he put together. But I remember when we started it, we were like, it's the same reason why Mike Port isn't in it. Or
right.
Why we don't go back into the whole, how John Henry got the Red Sox and Joe O'Donnell's going for the team. And we were like, okay, we need like a start ignition point where basically we get to, Kevin Millar and David Ortiz, not as soon as possible, but like as naturally and as quickly as possible. So we really thought it kind of started more with Theo being hired, less than the core roster being built beforehand. That isn't to say that isn't the reason why they won. It's just for the doc. That's kind of was our determination structurally.
Did Grady Little just end this interview abruptly when he lifted his shirt up and was taking the microphone off?
That was he ended it. It was like a 2-part thing. Yeah, I've been asked this before. Like if he took it off and didn't want to answer the question, and I gotta be honest, I was so focused on sometimes I don't notice if if the person is just like, he was like, I gotta go. I think it was like either he needed to go to the bathroom or like fill up a water cooler or something. But yeah, he was like, hold on, I gotta go. But I had asked a question beforehand, and I didn't really think there was anything nefarious to what I was saying, or anything like that. But no, Grady was a great interview. He was.
Well, anybody that compared himself to Osama bin Laden,
It's just great. He's like this, old school guy. One of my favorite little details about Grady is the movie, it's like maybe the top baseball movie of all time, Bull Durham. He was the manager at that time. He was a coach in for the Durham Bulls, and he's the guy who had to scout and get all the other baseball players around the main talent. Like, he would be like, this is the guy who should play left field. He was like a coordinator for that series, and he's the guy who had to help Tim Robbins be able to throw baseball. Apparently, he had never thrown a baseball, had no idea how to pitch, and Grady Little how to do it. So Grady's contribution, not only to the greatest maybe baseball movie of all time, Bull Durham, is huge and unmentioned, but also, he's the guy who, and I understood why he sat for the interview. Like, David Ortiz wasn't a David Ortiz until he got under Grady's wing, and Kevin Millar wasn't either, and Bill Miller wasn't either. So I feel like he does have his fingerprints all over that 04 team in terms of maturing those guys, those core hitters, now Red Sox icons. And that doesn't really get mentioned a lot. So I understood why he did it.
20 years later, I'm sorry.
Oh,
20 years later, I mean, that was obviously 2 decades ago, but the passion for baseball in 20 years has changed so dramatically. I mean, when you watched the comeback, you felt what it was really like for us.
Yeah.
What baseball really meant to us 20 years ago. Fast forward to 20 years later, it's not the same.
It's different. It's definitely different. I remember, I mean, you were probably there when the Patriots won.
Oh yeah, it was a really that was
and the fans are chanting "Yankees suck." It's like, what does this have to do with the Patriots winning? So, yeah, I feel like part of it is also the other Boston teams winning. The Celtics winning and the Bruins winning, and obviously the Patriots winning. But the Red Sox are kind of now they're almost like a victim of their own success a little bit, where now we expect.
Well, this is the real curse. The real curse.
Yeah, it's for
86 years. The real
oh my God, my wife. We're watching the game the other night. My wife said, "I hope there isn't a curse of Mookie Betts," and I was like, "Don't tell me that." So I feel like we expect now to win, whereas before we were kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop. And that whole, sarcastic, fatalistic kind of vibe of the Red Sox really played with a sort of sarcastic, fatalistic vibe of the guy in the Dorchester Dunkin' Donuts every morning. It's like that same. The team was emulating the personality of the town.
They were us.
Yeah. So it was, it was. I feel like it's different now for sure, but your hope is that the that kind of animosity. I don't want to say animosity, but intensive kind of focus on the Red Sox comes back. I think the Yankees are helping with that too. Seeing the Yankees in the World Series,
right.
Nobody in Massachusetts or New England is very happy with that, and they want to get back there. And I feel like that will come back. Hopefully, I remember going to the Red Sox games 20 years ago, and they're we had an editor who was like, "Oh, the waves going on in the grandstands." I was like, "No, that's a fist fight. That's that would happen every game. Like that doesn't really happen anymore. So he was like, that would happen every game. I was like, yeah, in the Red Sox Yankees game. I was like, once, at least once.
Right.
If there was only one fight in the grandstands, you'd be like, this isn't a very good game. So I don't know if that's coming back, but I do think like, the Yankees being in the World Series and that expectation to win now, kind of that downward pressure used to be like, you need us, the downward pressure used to be, you need to win. We haven't won in so long. And now it's like the downward pressure. It is like, you have to win this year, every year.
Yeah, well, that's the great thing about the comeback. You captured not only a sporting event, as it was a sporting event, but you also captured the mood of the people.
Whole region. Yeah. Of the whole region.
You captured us. You
Well,
captured
is that a whole thing where like they're like, people are like, well, how did the clubhouse change? Like, how did the team change? And like, you've been in there. I try to explain to people how small the Red Sox clubhouse was. I was like, it was so small. And back then, the Celtics were meandering, the Bruins, like Ray Bork had left and then like won a Stanley Cup with the Avalanche. And, really everybody was focal point was Red Sox, and that clubhouse is so small. I was like, after a game, it wouldn't be like 4 or 5 beat reporters in there. It would be like 40 people after every game, just like,
Except if you went to Nomar's locker, you couldn't cross the tape line.
Oh, the red line, the red line that was put in. Yeah.
It was embroidered into the carpet.
Yeah.
Is there any doubt, Colin, that the trade of Nomar was the flashpoint for that season?
Yeah, Nomar so.
He's a dick. Come on.
You're right.
Not to me. He was an idol to me.
I understand. Of course.
But I do. And you think back on that trade, like if that trade was made today, you're not getting anything for Nomar. A guy on the last year of his contract who isn't playing every day, can play like once, 3 out of 4 days, 2 out of 3 days. Like back then, like you look at the footage of the fan reaction back then, they're like, oh, we should have gotten Randy Johnson or somebody. And now, like if you had traded a superstar, who was going in the last year of his contract, who was hurt, who hadn't played up to the standard that he was used to for that year, you'd get like some single A player and like a ball boy, and you'd be like, wow, awesome, thumbs up. And to get Cabrera and Doug Mankiewicz, although it's funny, Kevin Millar was not exactly ecstatic about Doug Mankiewicz.
No, he was not. He was mad, got mad at me because
he was, he said it in our interview. He's like, you got to put that in there. Like, why? He was like, have you ever heard of a defensive replacement for a first baseman in the 6th inning?
He got really mad at me.
Yeah.
That Mankiewicz was a better first baseman.
No, he still hasn't gotten over that one. He still isn't too happy that he had to leave games.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that. Right, good.
Yeah. So, but it worked out. It worked out.
Yeah. Who was there to catch the ball when folk?
Yeah, Mankiewicz. I remember asking him. I was like, the slap play, and he goes, "Yeah, no, I had a pretty good view of that from the bench." I was like, yeah.
What's next, Colin?
We got a couple. Yeah, we got a couple things. We got it's a project at HBO, another baseball project. It's kind of like early stages. We're figuring that out, and then we have another documentary, which it actually came out of the Tribeca Film Festival like a year and a half ago, but we had to pull it back. It's on. We had to pull it back because it's a followed, like we're following 2 people, and like in real time, and the story kept on going. It was about it's called Carol and Johnny. It's about a man and wife bank robber from West Texas. He had just gotten out of prison, and he wanted to reconnect with his wife down in Texas. So we have to we're re-editing that, and then God, I think we have another project with Jimmy Kimmel EPing about Las Vegas in the '90s. So we have some stuff going on. Honestly, I've been like kind of an empty suit on that side of it for the last week. I've been just doing, Red Sox centric stuff. So,
Of course.
but yeah, HBO and then ABC and this Carol and Johnny project.
Who's blown you? Like a lot of people want to interview you, like what we're doing today. Have you been blown away by any requests that come from?
Other than this one, of course, this is got to be
This one.
here at the top.
No, it's like everybody. I was like, if it's a 617 number, that will be good. Like, if it's a 212 number, you might be like, this is going to be such a good interview. But I'm blown. I think Nick and I are kind of very happy with the it's an easy story to do, but it's a hard story. Like, it's like well covered, but you got to cover it in a new way or go deeper. And I think we're happy with the outreach and the kind of social media reaction of it. That people.
Yeah, you guys have got some really great.
Not even on social media. I'm not on Instagram or Twitter. I realized like real early on, I wasn't cool enough to be on those things. So, but I think them and Netflix too has been very. I don't want to say surprised, but ecstatic about the response to it. Yeah.
Well, you got some great local press. You know that. I mean,
I got the Herald and the Globe to agree on something, which was huge.
No.
And you get Lynch and Lobel together too. I mean,
Right.
You know what? Growing up, the question always was, "Is Mike Barnicle your dad?"
Yeah.
Now the question is that are Nick and Colin Barnicle your sons?
Oh yeah, that would be.
That's really going to piss
be
him
incredible.
off.
Although, I think we went on a Morning Joe the other day. It was like 5:30 in the morning, and we got on, and the first thing I said was like, "Wow, how did we ever get on this show?" What's the term? Nepo babies or whatever? Just so.
Funny.
But we were there, and they do like we don't like do. Nick doesn't do TV. I don't really do TV. So like we're sitting there and Mike knows what to do, and they have like a bumper shot. We're like, what is that? Where they like push in on you.
Yeah.
And Nick was sitting there. It was like all three of us sitting together, and Mike was like, looked over at Nick, was like, just don't act weird. You're acting weird. You look weird. Stop acting weird. And Nick was like, what do I do? And I was like, don't worry about it. And the cover of the Post that day had some salacious photo of like a supermodel. And I, right as the camera was coming, I threw it to him and I was like, hold that paper up. And he was like, don't give that to me. This is awful. But yeah, it's always good to be anywhere in the ballpark of the old man. I mean,
he used to be on. Remember, he used to be on Chronicle at 7:30.
I was Race to the Cape. That was my first ever TV appearance. I'm in the back seat, and he gets second place because I have to stop at the in Wareham to go to the bathroom before we cross the bridge, and we had been sitting in traffic the whole time. And then
Mary Richardson and was Peter Mahegan in that too?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and it was I was like Race to the Cape.
One thing your dad never brought to work Channel 5 with him. He never brought a sport coat, so he always had to come up to the sports office and take my blue. And I had like a blue blazer and a black blazer. That's it. I just alternated them. So the black blazer was at the cleaners, and so it's like 11:15. I go to the rack where my thing is, and there's nothing there except an empty hanger. I said, "Where the F is my blue blazer?" So I call your dad up at 11:15. I said, "Do you have my blue blazer?" "Oh yeah, I drove home with it. It's in the back of my car. I'll bring it in tomorrow." I said, "I got nothing to wear tonight at 11 o'clock." So I'm trying. Everybody's jackets are on the whole place, and Barnicle's got he probably did that 3 or 4 times.
Oh, that's it. The second day I went into work with the Red Sox in the clubhouse, you're supposed to wear khakis. And I had worn jeans the first day, and Wakefield cut them up into jorts because like I made the mistake. And the second day, I didn't have a pair of khakis. And my dad drove me in, and I was like, I need khakis. And he was wearing khakis. He's like, you have to be kidding me. And I was like, I don't have them. It's like, 7 a.m, no stores open. So we had to go down into like the WEEI lot or something. And he had to give me his khaki pants, which on me looked like Hammer Time pants. They were huge. And he had to get in the car in just his underwear and drive home. And as he was driving home, he's coming down, past the old wife onto there, and he gets behind a school bus, and he's in his underwear behind the school bus. And he was like, that night, he was like, I drove home the whole way behind a school bus in my underwear. He was like, if a cop had pulled me over, I'm not having a conversation. I'm in the back of the cruiser.
Well,
So I got it back for you.
We got a lot of stories about your dad. I'll tell you that. I remember the day after the first Red Sox game after the bombing, after the marathon bombing.
Yeah.
Which was they postponed Friday night, and Saturday it was against Kansas City. And Neil Diamond, I was up doing the PA,
Yeah.
which to me was the best job in the world. I love doing. But anyway, Neil Diamond, they brought him in. He came in on his own.
Yeah.
Just to do Sweet Caroline in person after the bombings, for the whole psyche of the city. So they told me, don't say anything. This is a secret. Nobody knows anything. But I had to tell your dad because I knew he was in the ballpark. I said, so I sent him a little text. I said, Mike, you're not going to believe this, but they brought in Neil Diamond, but don't say anything. He says, you know what? I've been sitting next to that asshole for 4 innings. So I know everything.
If there's an A-lister star out there, Mike will find him. Mike has
There's no question. It was just great. Well, you were great, Colin. I wish you the best.
Hold on before we go, though.
You're a star. You're a star.
My buddy George Gray. Hey, if you're thinking about a new vehicle, go where the Lynches go where the Lobels go, and go where the Barnicles go. Go see our good friend George Gray at George Gray's Lexington Toyota. We've all been customers for years because we know that George Gray and his family and his staff will treat you right. They're family-owned and operated dealership that we trust, and you can trust as well. Go see the big wheel, we call him, George Gray at George Gray's Lexington Toyota. I've got, let's see, my wife, my mother, my sister, my daughter. I think they'll all have cars. I know that, Colin, that your whole family. In fact, my oil change 2 weeks ago. I'm sitting there, and your dad walks in. He's
there all the time. It's like his second office.
Miles on it. He's training it in.
He's like become like he thinks he's a car guy now, but he keeps buying the same version of the same car from George Gray. I think I'm right up there. The best part about going to George Gray is they can fix your car, your fender bender pretty quickly. And I think I'm right up there leading the league in terms of George Gray fender benders. And it's always awful because it's like, technically my first name is Michael and my middle name's Colin, and I go by Colin. So whenever I come in, my license is Michael Barnicle. Oh. And my dad's like, they think it's me doing this. I'm a terrific driver. I'm like, I was in my early 20s during all that. And I'm like, yeah, well, I mean, I'm not the one who named myself, my man. Like, this is on you.
Well, Colin, this was a lot of fun.
It was.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on. And congratulations on what I think this is a marvelous docuseries. I grew up here and went through the long stretches of Red Sox frustration and lived through the glory years. But, this was really, I watched it and I was riveted. And I like Bob said, I had tears and I was nervous. And I said, oh, shit, are they going to win Game 7? Are they going to win this thing? And we lived it. But I think you checked all the boxes. I think what I'm trying to say.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah. And if any paintings show up, let us know.
Yeah. I have a couple of them. I'm just waiting.
Oh, okay. That's good. That's a good
I think we should go to Santarpio's for lunch, Bob. What do you think?
You go to Santarpio's, you might have a coronary from the pizza, the amount of pizza you eat, but you'll come away with it maybe $10 million richer. So
Not bad.
you got to weigh those possibilities.
Well, we're looking forward to the next one, Colin. Great job, both of you guys.
All right, Colin.
Thank
Thanks
you.
a lot.
Thanks.
Bye, folks. Thanks for checking in, and make sure you follow us on unanchoredboston.com.